Good afternoon, faculty. Thank you for coming to this meeting. Today I will be talking with you all about essay tests, more specifically, how to build them and how to score them. So let's begin by asking ourselves, what are essay tests? The definition I like to give is a question in which students are asked to provide a constructive response displaying their knowledge on a particular topic. You may be wondering, why should I use essay tests in my classroom? Essay tests are useful because they allow you to see if students are truly comprehending the material. After all, if a student can compose an essay in response to a question, it is generally agreed upon that they have a solid understanding of the content. Creating a good essay test requires great thought and planning. There are 5 main guidelines to follow when creating essay items. Step 1 is to clearly express to students the desired length of their responses. It is important that your students know how long of a written response you are looking for. A restricted response item places limits on both the length and content of the essay. An example of this would be, write a 100-word response describing 2 of the symbols in the movie The Wizard of Oz. On the other hand, an extended response item typically requires students to provide lengthier and more in-depth responses. An example of this would be, write an essay comparing and contrasting society in the 1950s and now. Be sure to include at least 2 sociology concepts. From there, evaluate how those concepts play into your own life. Step 2 is to clearly convey the students' tasks. This is the most crucial part of the process because if students do not understand what it is they are being asked to write, they will not be able to complete the assessment. Therefore, you should make sure that the assessment task, also known as the prompt, is clear and appropriate for the student's grade level. The third step is to give students a time frame in which to write in and a value for each item. If you have 3 essay items on a test, and the first item is worth 15 points, while the remaining 2 are worth only 5 points, students should be made aware. Also, giving students a general idea of how much time should be spent on each item will prevent them from getting bogged down on one item. Guideline number 4 is to avoid giving students a selection of essay questions. Many teachers will allow students to select 2 of the 4 essay prompts. This can lead to an unclear test interpretation. Essay tests shouldn't be a menu that students pick from, but rather direct instructions provided by you, the teacher. The final step is to predict how your students will respond. This can help you find shortcomings in the essay prompt. Now that you know how to build an essay item, let's explore how to score them. Again, there are 5 key steps to follow. Step 1 is to choose the approach. One approach you may choose is the holistic scoring strategy. This type of approach focuses on the essay as a whole. Using this strategy, you can assign a score based on an overall impression of the essay, or you can focus on certain criteria. For example, you can give a score of a 4 through 6 based on criteria as a whole, including organization, clarity, word choice, mechanics, and adaptation to audience, etc. If a student shows weakness in one area, they can still receive a very high score if other areas are exceptional, because scoring is done as a whole. Another route you may go is the analytic approach. This is a more focused and specific way of scoring. This method is similar to the holistic approach in that it uses criteria. However, students can earn points within each criterion. For example, students may earn 1 to 3 points on organization, 1 to 3 points on clarity, etc. This method is beneficial in looking at students' specific strengths and weaknesses. It is also important to note that you can in fact combine these 2 strategies to score your students' essays. Step number 2 is to create a scoring key prior to grading. The scoring key can be modified while grading, however, it is best to start with a key rather than grading as you go along. Creating a key essentially means assigning weight or point values to different criteria you are looking for in an essay. For example, if students are writing about World War II, you may create subtasks for students to include in their responses, such as countries involved, major generals, outcome, etc. Step 3 is to determine if spelling and mechanics counts. In many cases, you will want to see how well your students can compose a response using proper English. However, if the assignment is a personal journal log, you may choose not to count off for spelling. This is something you must decide before grading. The fourth step is to grade only one item at a time. Instead of grading one student's entire paper, score each student based on criteria 1, then score each student's paper based on criteria 2, and so on. This will ensure consistency in your grading and will provide you, the teacher, with reliable test-based interpretations. The final step is perhaps one of the most important, and that is to grade your students' essays without looking at the name written on the top. This can be done by having students write their name on the back of their paper or using a sticky note to cover their name. We are only human, and it is tempting to excuse mistakes and give high scores to a student who always participates in class and who usually makes A's. On the same note, seeing a student's name who never listens in class can influence you right off the bat to assign a lower score. To wrap things up, let's take a look at 2 sample essays. This is an example prompt that 4th grade students were given on the Writing Star test. However, it is something you can adapt for day-to-day use in the classroom. Here, students are asked to write about something they look forward to doing, explaining what it is they wish to do and why. We can see that graders will count off for mechanical errors as it is listed here. Students are given length restraints as they are only provided with one sheet of paper. If you were using this in your classroom, you could do the same, or you could include in 250 to 300 words ... You may also include in your instructions that students will have the class time allotted, say 45 minutes, to complete the essay. Here is an example essay that a student wrote in response to the prompt. In the essay, the student talks about his or her desire to go to Disneyland. If you were the grader scoring this essay using the analytical method, you could begin by looking at certain aspects such as organization and mechanics. Here we can see that the student indented paragraphs and, although weak, has tried to come up with an introduction and conclusion. You may give the student 1 point because their organization skills are developing. However, in terms of mechanics, there are over 5 mistakes and 3 errors are highlighted in the first paragraph. In this case, you may give the student 0 points towards his or her overall grade. If instead you choose to grade the paper holistically, you may see that organization is developing and that there are still many mechanical errors. Also, the essay as a whole does not strongly support the prompt. Therefore, on a scale of 2 to 6, he or she would receive a 2. Looking at another student's essay to the same prompt, we see that this student looks forward to one day standing on the Olympic podium receiving her first place medal. The organization is developing, however it lacks paragraph structure. I would give her 1 point for organization. The essay is very well written, with little mechanical error, and strong imagery support the prompt. Holistically, I would give her a 6 on a 2 to 6 point scale. That is all the time we have for today. I hope that you all learned some valuable information on how to implement essay tests in your classroom. Thank you for your time.